Okay, everybody, welcome back. Chapter 5 of Tanya. If you missed any of the classes, we've been uploading all our classes on YouTube. You're welcome to catch up. First of all, last week was a dry class, so this week we got to have a double, right? Because we got to make up for last week. So we'll start off with Al-Chaim.
Amen.
Okay, so last week we learned a phenomenal concept. That we can learn Hashem's Torah. And what's Hashem's Torah? Hashem's Torah is Hashem's wisdom. So although Hashem's wisdom is infinite, and really, like the prophet like Eliyahu says, no thought can grasp him. So how is it that we can grasp him? So we said the Torah is compared to water. Just like water descends, Hashem ultimately, in His kindness, gives us the gift, the ability that we're able to understand it. So when we learn something, and Alter Rebbe is going to continue with this topic in chapter 5, when we learn something, we are internalizing Hashem's wisdom. And we are, so to speak, we are encompassing, we are hugging Hashem's wisdom. And we said, when you're giving someone a hug, obviously he's wearing a shirt. Let's say he's wearing a shirt and a sweater and a coat, it's still a hug. The fact that he's wearing multiple layers of clothing, you're still getting an embrace from that person. So when you're learning Torah, yes, it's true that the way the Torah is learned in Gan Eden and the way the Torah is learned by the angels is on a different level. But just because the Torah on our level of experience is understood via the medium of material things, it doesn't lessen the quality of the Torah. You're still learning Hashem's Torah, and that's our ultimate kindness. Now, in chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe is going to speak about the great idea of understanding, of grasping, because the word is not really used understanding. He uses the word grasping. Tfisa, tofes is to grasp. And in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about how great Torah is over all other mitzvahs. Which sometimes in Chassidus you find Torah is the best thing in the world. Sometimes you find doing mitzvahs is the best thing in the world. It all depends on what you're focusing on. So there'll be another chapter we'll talk about doing mitzvahs is the best thing. Okay, Tosfos Beer, page 89 in the old print, 91 in the new print. Yeah. Okay, Tosfos Beer Heitev, to understand, to explain well. Losha Tfisa, when the expression grasp, Tfisa means grasp. Sha'amar Eliyahu, that Eliyahu said, Leis machshava tfisa bey, the tfisa bach, the no thought can grasp you. If you look in on Friday night before for davening, there's a whole paragraph over there. It talks about, it touches upon how Hashem is experienced, but ultimately says, as much as we understand, no one can truly understand. Hine kol seichel, every person's intellect. Kishemaskil, when he perceives or masik and understands b'sichloi in his intellect, eze musik, some idea. So harei seichel teifes es hamuskel. So your intellect grasps the idea. So for example, if you have this watch, I can remove the watch from you. Why? Because the watch is not one with you. Anything that's not one with you, you can have, and you can be departed with. But when you understand something, I can beat you senseless, but it's still in here. So when you grasp it, makifa b'seichel, and it's encompassed in your seichel, v'hamuskel, and the subject matter is nitfas, is grasped, is held, umukaf, and encompassed by muluvish, and clothed in within the intellect that is perceiving it. So when you master the subject, the mind is engaged in analyzing its detail. The subject is still above the mind. So when you learn something, there's two processes. Before you learn it, the object is above you. Now, obviously, above is not in terms of space, meaning it's beyond you. So now when it's beyond you, the idea is over you, encompasses you. You're surrounded by it. Meaning, when a person is trying to understand something and he's truly thinking, he can't be bothered because he's involved, he's enveloped by this idea. I'm trying to understand it. And I'm breaking the head. The idea is beyond me. But when you understand it, I can bother you because now it's a part of me. You coming to me doesn't disturb me. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's a note of the. So give me a note of the Rebbe in a second. V'agam haseichel muluvash b'muskel b'shah, and also the intellect is clothed in the time the time of the intellectual comprehension and grasping. Let's learn what the note of the Rebbe at the bottom of the page. The process of understanding an idea is as follows. At first, one grasps the idea or the concept in general, and at the time his intellect encompasses the subject. Because we all know that when you learn something, first you get that initial, I got it. You don't really got it. You got it in a very, very broad way. But then you have to work out the details because you don't fully understand it. Proof is, if someone asks you a question, you can't really explain it. Understanding means, true understanding means it's inside of you, and not only spit back the information. Sometimes kids are starting school now. Teacher says, okay, what did I say? Maybe it's the old teachers. You listening? What did I say? On a side note, I'll tell you a good story. The Rebbe wanted, for whatever reason, he's the Rebbe, I don't understand. No one understands the Rebbe, he's a tzaddik. The Rebbe went to university to get a degree in engineering. Why? But ultimately, he used that degree. He worked for the American government, and he was working in electrical engineering on ships. You know, during World War II. When he came to New York,
Brooklyn shipyards.
Brooklyn Navy Yard. Yeah, every day the Rebbe would go to work in the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
Yeah, that's where my father-in-law also worked.
Yeah, see, maybe he went there. No, the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The Brooklyn Navy Yard is huge. Anyway, so he was in. So he went to class. Now the Rebbe would always take a sefer with him. One time the professor busted the Rebbe learning Gemara during the lesson. So he said, "Oh yeah, you think you're such a smarty pants? You could learn?" So he says, "All right, stand up in front of the whole class." I don't know if he said stand up, but yeah, what are we talking about? So the Rebbe stood up, and I remember, aside from being a great man and a tzaddik, Rebbe was also a genius. Rebbe had a once in a life a mind that's. He said that lesson, the next lesson. Finally, the guy said, "All right,
Sit down."
yeah,
Good enough for you.
yeah." You know, who was in the same class with him? Rabbi Soloveitchik.
Oh.
Yeah. So when you that first I got it moment, you feel like you got it, but really you don't got it. You have to internalize and develop it. So that the Rebbe says in this note. First, the intellect encompasses the idea. Afterwards, one begins to dissect. So if I tell you a theory, and at first it makes sense, but it's okay. How does this theory apply here? How does the theory apply there? And then you're not sure. Now you got to start learning it again. So now the idea is above you. But once you learn it with all the ins and outs, now you truly got it. So derech mashal, for example, when a person understands or masik and comprehends, eza halacha b'mishnah, some halacha in Mishnah or Gemara, la shura abuy, he understands it thoroughly, he understands it well. You know, what's the difference between a rav and a rabbi?
A Rav concentrates on like one area, like kashrut or something like that.
No,
And
a rav can answer halacha questions. A rabbi can't. A rabbi is a person that learned and knows. So if you ask him a question that he previously learned, he can give over that information. A rabbi is pretty much a relayer of information. But unless the rabbi studied extensively and has shown that he can mentally access and refer the information. I remember when I took my smicha test, my fourth, when a person gets smicha, and listen, the Chabad system, there are 4 tests you take. So it's meat and basar v'chalav, meat and milk, taruvis, forbidden mixtures. Then the other 2, depending on which yeshiva you go to. Some people do malicha, salting. Some people do treifus, the laws of what makes shchita, slaughtering, what makes it kosher, not kosher. Some people do the laws of Shabbos. My 4th test was the laws of Shabbos. And the guy who tested us, he wrote the commentary in the Shulchan Aruch. You can find him, Rabbi Ashkenazi al Shalom. He was a rabbi in Kfar Chabad. And his curriculum was larger than everyone else. And everybody knew that was his hardest test. So we studied like crazy, day and night. Studied and studied and studied. So the code of Jewish law, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it's very intense. Alter Rebbe say a law, we'll say when does it apply, but when does this apply? And that's only conscious of opinions. It gets very intense. And we went from chapter 250 through chapter 330 something, I think. It's a lot. And he starts off saying, chapter 252, it says this, and in chapter 328, how does it, how do you drive the 2? We're like, what does one thing got to do with the other? One's putting something on a blech on Shabbos, and one I think has to do with a sick person. I remember. So no connection. Like, what do you mean there's no connection? And he's blasting us. And we're like, that's the difference. This guy's a Rav.
I'll never be a Rav.
Exactly. Go to Pembroke Pines.
There you are.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Right. I always say, the greater the rabbi, the closer to Brooklyn you are.
So the guy who's the rabbi of Chabad in Hawaii,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
he's pretty far away, but he's got a nice place to live.
Exactly. Listen, there's give and take. But a Rav is a person doesn't only learn about it. You can tell, are you allowed to put a meat spoon in a milkshake? No, okay, that's easy. The Rav, you ask him a question because he doesn't only learn it, he knows it. And he can go into it and apply this scenario, this situation, and this leniency, and that dependency. What does that and what does that opinion say? He has it all in his head at once. That's why you ask him the question, because he can access, and not only access, but he knows it so well. It's kind of like a doctor, right? A doctor, there's a difference between a person who graduated from medical school and a doctor. Just because you graduated from medical school, you can't operate on me. I'm sure you got A's on all your tests, but you don't have what's called shimush. Shimush means you don't have any practical experience. How to utilize the situation. So knowing the information is just not learning, and knowing the information is knowing it.
Yeah, Levi had to go when Levi before he started his coursework for being a doctor of physical therapy. He had to go to a Rav because he has to do physical therapy on women as well.
Yeah.
So he had to go to a Rav and consult the Rav and make sure, in
Right.
all the different situations, etc.
Right. So when you really know the information, it's how to apply it. So now, when you know the information like that, hooray, sichloi, going back into now your intellect, peifes, grasps, and makif, and encompasses ayasadat Allah. You know it 100%. The gam sichloi meluvash ba'ivas l'shah, and your intellect is clothed inside that law. You're one with the law. Now think about it. If it's baseball, very nice, right? You can call, like some guys you can say, who played third base for the Yankees in 1974? Bam, right?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? No, so there's some guys.
I went to school with a kid who was on the spectrum. He had a hard time in classes.
Right.
But you ask him a stat for any sport.
Sure.
Everybody in class had this. They loved asking him a question because he knew everything.
Yeah. So, but talking about, let's say, a common person. There's some people that they love sports. Some people think I'm into sports. I'm not into sports. I like watching the game. I like watching the playoffs. But there's some guys, they'll watch the Yankees. The Yankees are terrible this year. Yeah. I'm on a chat. Right? They're watching the Yankees. They're losing 9 in a row. They watch every pitch. They're into it. And you ask them who wore number 19 in 1984. I promise you, there's some guys in that chat can tell you. That's knowing the information. But that's shtus. That's nonsense. Imagine the subject matter you know is Hashem's will. Now what you're one with is not Mickey Mantle. You know, what you're one with is Hashem's will. So halacha zu, this law that you know backwards and forwards, that is Hashem's will. What's halacha? Halacha is the way we're supposed to follow. Who decided the way we act? Hashem. So someone once I forgot exactly how he framed this question, but he had a problem with tefillin. Like, or I can't remember exactly. Was it in something to do with bar mitzvah? I can't remember. It basically was coming off like I was just pressuring him that I wanted him to put on tefillin. I said, you think I came up with this idea? You think I was the one who thought up to put black boxes on your head? No. The reason why we do it is because that's the way Hashem wants. You do it. So you do it. Now, why? Because Hashem decided, it rose in His will. For example, in the Gemara, in the Gemara, whenever you're learning Gemara and you have two litigants, the classic litigant names are Reuven and Shimon, always. Reuven, when Reuven says A, and Derech Moshe, Shimon v'kach v'kach, and Shimon says B, Hashem says Yipstak b'nei kach v'kach. Who decided this is halacha? Some people, they think, that's the rabbis made that up. What's the job of the rabbis in the Mishnah and the Gemara? The job of the rabbis in the Mishnah and the Gemara is you have the text in the Torah, and how do you get from that text to the halacha? There has to be the clear point. Now sometimes it's a debate because you could learn a verse and you could see it one way, and the other rabbi could look at a verse and see it the other way. But it's always based on what the Torah says. But ultimately, they're arguing over what does Hashem want from me right now. Now, now, if this never will happen, like we learned last week, who remembers what halacha from last week's parsha is an impossible law?
The one of the red heifer.
It's not impossible. There were 9 red heifers. It wasn't last week's Torah portion. Were you in shul last week? What you want doing? You came.
I must have fallen asleep.
The one where you have to stone your
Falling
kid.
asleep.
Stone your kid. A rebellious son. Stone your kid. All right. Father comes home. All right, guys. The rabbi told me. All of a sudden, woo! Police. All right, Michael J. You've lost permission to ever quote me ever again.
I didn't quote you. You asked me. I gave you my words.
Yeah. So we learned the law in last week's Torah portion that there's a rebellious son, and he's stealing to drink wine and to eat meat, and he also drinks a crazy amount of wine at one time, and he eats the meat and it's not as cooked. He acts like a real, they say in Yiddish, a real bulvan, a real, I don't know how to say it, but yeah, real pig, yeah, but yeah. And so we do is first we warn him and we whip him. If he continues in the way, we kill him. So that law that rabbis explain in the Gemara can never happen. It's impossible for the criteria to be met. So he's saying even if such a law, to pass litigation, arguments, and a claim. So that means the purpose of the Torah, the purpose of learning Torah, there's two ideas. Number one is to know how to act like a Jew. So does that mean all the laws that pertain to the temple service, or let's say something else, we shouldn't learn? Let's say you're not a Kohen, we shouldn't learn those. Like a Kohen. So there's another idea. You learn Torah because it's Hashem's wisdom, and you want to get into God's head, so to speak. Continuing. Still, since since this is what Hashem decided in His will and wisdom. If one litigant claims this, and other litigant says this, the verdict should be this. Now, regardless if it's practical, specifically when a person comprehends this verdict, and it goes through the whole long back and forth. So which Gemara is learned in Yeshiva? Bavli or Yerushalmi? Bavli. Talmud Bavli. Bavli. From Babylon. Bavli. Yerushalmi, by the way, wasn't written in Yerushalayim. Talmud Yerushalmi was written in the north. They called it Talmud Yerushalmi because Yerushalayim is the most important city, Jerusalem, in Israel.
Why is the Babylonian one learned over the other one?
Not only that, I'll tell you what. Make the question. Talmud Yerushalmi is a lot easier to learn. It's case, law, case, law.
It's much smaller too.
Much smaller because there's no debate, very little debate. Because if the idea was just to figure out what to do, so you would only learn what's practical, and you'd only learn what you got to do. That's it, and get on with your day. But because you're learning Hashem's Torah, and you want to know why we're doing it. So when you learn the halacha, not only learn what to do, but you learn exactly why it is. So you get inside Hashem's head. You know, when you think about our parenting, a kid can listen to a parent because it says so. Yeah, maybe the kid might be obedient, but that's not a really relationship. But if the kid can obey or follow his parents' lesson based on the values, that's a much deeper connection. I heard from a man, I think his man is Freeman who said this. I'm pretty sure it was him. He said once, there's no greater nachas a parent can have when hearing your kid say something that you taught them to your grandchild. Oh, I did something right. He said, great nachas. So when you learn Hashem's Torah, you are getting into Hashem's head. That's why the more you delve into it, back and forth, the more you're getting into it. So now, harezet toifis. So he says what's happening is you actually comprehend, umakif and grasp the sichlei v'chamasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is giving you the ability to understand the impossible. The less machshavat v'isabei. No thought can grasp it. Nor can any, not his will or his wisdom. So, ultimately, the difference between finite and infinite is
Infinite.
Thank you. And only the infinite can decide on what terms to bring the other party close. I mean, this doesn't only work in infinite. It works in human beings also. I can't decide that we're in a relationship. I can't decide you're my friend. Like the old joke, this guy had a crush on a girl, but he never had the nerve to walk up to her and actually ask her out. He'd always like follow her around, like kind of creepy, but suddenly, look at her from a distance. One day, he sees how she's walking with a guy, walking hand in hand. They're obviously in a relationship. He walks over to her. It's over. Right? You can't decide that we're in a relationship. It doesn't work that way. You need to agree to be in a relationship. So when you want to be in a relationship with Hashem, for a person to say, "Oh, this is holy," no, it doesn't work that way. Especially not when the other person is. Listen, I can lock you up in my house and say, "Listen, you're my prisoner." I mean, it's an unhealthy relationship. But with God, we're only on His terms. If He says we're in a relationship, we are. If He decides this is what I want, so really, logically, like what's that? According scientifically, a bee shouldn't be able to fly.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Right? So logically, scientifically, you shouldn't be able to understand anything from the Torah. If you take the formula, infinite wisdom, infinite and His wisdom, both infinite, finite, right? And you said the difference is infinite. There shouldn't be any connection between one and the other. So the fact that you're able to is like a bee flying. It shouldn't happen, but it does, and that's pretty cool. That has to be our attitude when we learn Torah. Now, so the only way to do it is the way Hashem decided. So you can't decide that this drinking beer is holy. It'd be great. I'm going to start a religion.
That's why we should have had the Jack Daniels, because that is holy.
Has more of a Jewish name, Yaakov Daniel. Yeah.
There you go.
Could we make something Modelo, something Jewish out of it? I don't know.
Never know.
So Hashem Hashem gives us the opportunity. Ki mislapshus ba'halacha tzarich lefreinu. Hashem gives us the ability to understand, to get inside His head, to understand His will, via the halacha. V'gam sichloi meluvash behem, and Hashem's intellect is clothed within Him. And Alter Rebbe says, "V'zeh yichud nifla." And this is a wonderful unity, because when you have a good friend, maybe whoever it is, and you're on the same page intellectually, it's a very tight, or are you thinking what I'm thinking, kind of thing. It's a very, very tight bond. When you're on the same, sometimes the kids try to play the parents against each other, right? But come to ask a question. Oh man, that's what mommy said. Exactly. Beautiful. That means we're a team. So when you get inside Hashem's head and you are united with His wisdom, it's a wonderful unity. There is no greater unity. There's nothing they can bring you closer. And we can't even give an example, because there is no material example. There is no physical example. Because automatically your physical, I'm on the chair, so I'm one with the chair. So if I glue myself to the chair, I'm not one with the chair. In material world, we're all composite. There is no such thing as unity. The only type of unity is intellect. Because once you know something, you can't unknow it. Unless you have the story of the Alter Rebbe. Did I share with you already the story of the Alter Rebbe?
Probably.
With the shepherd? Even now, it's worthwhile to say the story here. The Alter Rebbe composed or shared various tunes. Some of them are quite famous, like Keiliata, and Avinu Malkeinu. You sing the holidays. Avinu Malkeinu. Right? So a lot of the very famous Nigunim. It says Kol Deidi. Yes, some very, very famous ones that people sing. So there's a story. Again, the story, I want to preface the story that Alter was a great man, a tzaddik. He was a great man amongst great men. I just want to preface it, so that you have to understand who's involved in the story. The Alter Rebbe was once walking, and he heard a shepherd, a Gentile shepherd, playing a song, and he felt and understood.
I've heard it
Yes, it's a crazy story. He felt and understood.
twice.
Wow.
This is the third time.
Yeah. That
See?
this
Still
song.
making an impression.
There you go. We're making progress. This song would be useful in the service of Hashem, but he didn't only want to, he didn't want to use the song. He wanted to occupy the song. He wanted to take the song and have it solely in the use of Judaism. Not that it could be corruptible by using it in some other service. So he goes over to the shepherd and he says, "I want to buy the song off you. I want you to teach me a song, and it's going to be my song, not yours anymore." The shepherd's looking at this Jewish man, long beard. He says, "This guy's an idiot. Well, he'll pay me for the rights, and whatever." So he agreed. Alter Rebbe gave him money. He told Alter Rebbe the song. Alter Rebbe was musical by nature, so it took 2-3 times. Alter Rebbe thanked him, walked away. And afterwards, the shepherd picks up the flute, whatever it is, to his mouth to play. The idiot. And he picked it up. He forgot to do. Now the reason why that story is a story, because normally when you know something, you can't unknow it. That's what, for example, why do we have to be so careful what we see? Because seeing leaves an impression on your mind.
Yes.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it was once you know something, you can't unknow it. Because the unity between concept and intellect is wonderful. So we're giving all these examples because to stress, when you learn, there is nothing greater, there's nothing more holy, nothing more Jewish than learning Torah. Nothing better than that. But you always have to remember, though, whose Torah you're learning. That's a problem some people have. They treat Torah as a subject. Or it's a nice book. You always have to remember it's Hashem's Torah, it's Hashem's wisdom. Because otherwise you're cheapening it. So when there's no, it says Lias Achadim Umichad Mamish B'Chol Tzad B'Pina. Become one and unified from every side and angle. Any questions, by the way, so far? Any comments? No. We're missing some. Asaf, Yinon, Eric.
Which means we'll get done on time.
Probably next week.
Done. We're only in the beginning of book 1. Yeah, we got it. And let me tell you something.
Done.
This is the easy part. Where Zois, and this is the Milas Iser Godel in case. This is the great, distinctive, infinitely great superiority of Torah. Asher b'mitzvah yediyah Torah v'saga. Over all the comprehending of Torah is greater than every other mitzvah. I'll call mitzvah smaisius. Because when you're doing a mitzvah, now listen, we are going to talk about the greatness of mitzvahs. But right now, when you're doing a mitzvah, you are separate. The obedient one is separate from the commander. Yes, it's true. There is a connection there because you are obeying the commander. So there is obviously a very strong connection. But ultimately, I need you to do something for me. So there's the you and there's the me, and I'm commanding you and you're doing it. So there's automatically two separate entities. But when you're learning something, then you become, we also have to be careful what we read or what we listen to. When we were growing up, still now, we didn't listen to non-Jewish music. We even didn't listen to remember Yanni?
Yeah, sure.
Yanni, the instrument.
Player, whatever, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a big controversy in camp, right? In the plays, like in the background for plays music, everyone wanted to use Yanni. The whole debate: is Yanni kosher or not kosher? Right? But why? Because when you learn something and you're welcoming that thing, that item into your innermost being, you're choosing to unite. So now the question is, where is that coming from? Right. So a lot of the songs, I'm sure they're very beautiful songs. A lot of the songs are really schmutz, love, cheating, killing. I don't know what to sing about.
They're all country.
They're all country, right? Unless the country music. I went to the store, bought a bottle of milk, got it crashing the way home.
It's that or it's about their truck.
There you go.
The train and Mama's in jail.
Which
Oh,
one?
right.
Yeah,
I forgot about those two.
Trade when I was in jail. All right.
Yeah. Go.
Henry VIII, I am.
But when you do
But
something,
that's not a country song. That's a rock song.
I've been married.
7 times before. Each one was a Henry.
okay.
It's really pop.
Yeah, the lady killed
It's
them.
not-
On a side note, I never understood the difference in all the things. I mean, classical, I know classical. What a friend.
Well,
the
this
pop
is all forms
and
of
the
Did
rock.
they really call it
this,
pop at that point?
I don't know.
It's early 60s.
All right.
Early
I won't get into
60s,
this debate right now.
All right.
Early 60s.
And you were the guy who wanted to get done on time, right? Yeah.
I didn't start the side conversation.
But the point is when you learn something, you have it's an introduction to have a very, very deep mind-to-mind relationship.
Right. So,
Yeah.
not a question, maybe just an observation.
Observe.
Okay. So, the concept of studying Torah
Yeah.
that we talked about just a few moments ago, that's repeated, like I think on page 9 in the Siddur when we say it in the morning.
Well, the reason why we say it in the morning is because we make a blessing. We make a blessing Asher Baruch Rabbanim. Now, because you don't want to have a blessing in vain, so when the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, compile the Siddur, they put it in there, different parts of the Torah. So they have part of the Torah, which is the priestly blessings, which is practiced by Eloischa,
Right.
and then they have a Mishnah also. That's why that's there.
That's why that's.
So you fulfill, because really that blessing goes on for the whole day. When you make that blessing, you're supposed to have in mind the entire day, whatever learning. Because just in case a person doesn't learn, or in order to fulfill the obligation, the blessing right away, that's why that's there. But I mean, we speak about it. I mean, we learn other parts of. We read, or in the Siddur, there's other parts of learning as well. Like before Hodu, there's all a bunch of Mishnah and different things. So so take this into account before you read something, before you watch something, before you listen to something. Think about why you want to have an intimate relationship with this concept. Because remember, knowledge is knowledge. You can't say, "Oh, learning Torah, that's an intimate relationship with God." But watching this or reading this or that's just something that doesn't work that way. When you choose to let into your mind, when you choose to watch, when you choose to listen to, you are basically saying, "I wanna have a deep soul connection with you." You sure you want that connection? Or actually, let's frame it. That's on next negative. You can frame it in the positive as well. Later on in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about why do people make mistakes? Why do people make poor choices? So basically, it comes down to because we equate having a relationship with God with having a relationship with Mickey Mantle. I remember someone sent me a clip. One of the things that always bothered me about sports fans is the we.
Right.
I hate that. Oh, we didn't win. There's no we. There's them.
Yeah.
So, and my
It's
friend.
the team didn't win. You didn't do anything. You watched the game.
There's no we. My friend once sent me a clip from, I guess it's a show or TV, movie, whatever. So this kid says we, and the guy says to the kid, "We, Mickey Mantle's not paying your rent. He doesn't care about you."
No.
Something about that, right? So when if you had a choice, right? If you had a choice, so imagine your kid came over to you and said, "You have little kids, so you'll appreciate this." Right? So, Tati, let's have a catch, right? Or let's do a puzzle together. No, I want to watch American Idol. That's more important. How bad would you sound?
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
Yeah,
It sounds, especially is American Idol still on TV?
Yes, it is.
What?
I don't know. I don't watch it.
Really?
Yeah, it's still on. Somewhere.
That's got to be 20-something years already, no?
Yeah, no, it's
Wow.
it's been running.
Wow, all right. MASH is still on that.
No,
that was good.
in reruns on Hulu or something.
When we have the decision to learn. By the way, learning doesn't have to be always Gemara intense, and there's a lot of Jewish things you could learn that you can enhance your Judaic knowledge. It doesn't have to be
on Shabbos.
That's not. That every line is another curveball. But there's a lot of things you can learn. Jewish history, different things that can enhance your Jewish knowledge. It's still Jewish learning, but because before you make the decision, before you learn, you read, watch, listen, learn. Remember, whatever you choose to do, that's a relationship. Your time equals relationship. That's what it is. So when you learn Torah, it's the greatest bond you can have. Now, learning is the greatest bond you can have. When you learn Torah, Hashem's wisdom, like Alter Rebbe says, you can't even put words to it. You're getting into relationship with the divine. Let's pause here. Next week we'll knock out the rest of chapter 5, and then after chapter 5,
95.
we're holding by we're first
on
Tevez,
95.
and then after chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe is going to get into the bad news. The whole time we're talking about the godly soul and everything else. And so great, let's all do. The godly soul is this running, skipping, hopping, unicorns and rainbows and everything's all great. But the problem is there's the animal soul also. Animal soul also has the 10 faculties. The animal soul, as much as the godly soul loves to learn Torah, the animal soul loves the Yankees, which is a problem. So Chaim, have a good week. We'll see you next time. No?
Thursday, 6:45.